Hey guys, my name's Lisa,
And I'm Brittany.
and this is the Imperfect Moms Club.
Okay, guys, so this episode is really special to me because I have a special guest with me, and it's actually my mom. So say hi, Mom.
Hi.
She raised this lovely human that you're listening to right now. This episode's going to be really fun. So we're going to be talking about the good old days and how parenting has changed over all of the years. We're going to talk about ways that our parenting styles have changed from generation to generation. And then at the end, we're going to share one of our favorite stories from our childhood. So let's start with you, Mom. When were you, well, you don't have to tell us exactly how old you are, but like I'm a 90s baby. So what are you?
I'm a 1964 baby. And this, yeah, I'm vintage. I'm an antique.
Yeah. So tell me about what was like the typical family day like back then. Like this wasn't like the 1950s where like dad ran off to work and mom was wearing this poofy dress, and the kids called each other little Johnny and ran out to play. Like what was it like?
Well, I mean, when I was growing up, it was usually the mom was home, stayed home and watched the kids. You would get up, you'd have your breakfast, and you would be sent out in the yard to play for most of the day, play with the neighborhood kids. And when it was time to come home, it was usually when the sun started to go down. So there wasn't a lot of checking in on you because we had, what do I want to say? We were comfortable in our neighborhoods. We didn't worry about people kidnapping our kids or running off with our kids. And we had confidence in the neighbors. And usually the neighbors' mom was home too. So we weren't concerned about that. So we basically played outside most of the day. Now this is during the summer. During the school year, of course, you got up, you went to school, you came home, you did your homework. If you were lucky, you got to watch TV, and you had 3 channels.
I was just going to ask that.
Okay. We had ABC, NBC, CBS. That was it. It wasn't color by that time. We did have color TV, but you had 3 channels, and if you wanted to change the channel, you got up and changed it yourself. So there wasn't a whole lot to watch on TV. Saturday mornings were special because that's when cartoons were on. During the week, there were no cartoons to watch. It was Saturday morning only, and that's the day that you got to watch the cartoons. And usually you got to eat Pop-Tarts for breakfast. Or
they had Pop-Tarts back then?
Yes, we had Pop-Tarts back in the day. Yeah, they weren't as, I guess, evolved as today. We didn't have all the special flavors or whatever, like chocolate marshmallow or s'mores or whatever that. We just had your basic strawberry, blueberry, cinnamon stuff. But yeah, that was the special day Saturday. You got up and you watched cartoons, you stayed in your pajamas for a little while. And then, say by maybe 10 o'clock or whatever, it's out in the yard and you play. So it was pretty basic, very simple back in the day.
Yeah, you just like jump on your bike and just like ride around and.
Absolutely. And we didn't have helmets. There were no helmets back in the day. It's like, I mean, I ran into the back of a parked truck once, and there was no helmet maybe that's what's wrong with me today, but we didn't worry about sunscreen. I mean, it wasn't like, oh, let me slather you up with sunscreen 30 minutes before you go outside. It was like, you just went outside and you played, and you had that summer tan because no one in your neighborhood was putting sunscreen on. And you just rode your bike all over the neighborhood. I mean, you didn't go across the tracks to the other side of town because that was too far, but around the neighborhood, no worries. no sunscreen, no helmet. And somehow we made it through.
So what about like, because I know that now, like if, well, not me so much anymore, but first time mom, Brittany, you go to leave the house and you've got a diaper bag and you have like 4 bottles and a change of clothes and snacks and like everything. Did your mom do that for you?
No,
No.
no. It was maybe an extra diaper, but we didn't have the wipes to wipe down the grocery cart. I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but we went into the grocery store and I think we had Clara with us. And you put Clara in the cart and I was wiping the whole cart down with these disinfecting wipes. And you're like, Mom, what are you doing? You didn't do that for me when I was a kid. And of course we didn't do it when I was a kid either. I mean, if we licked on the handle or whatever, but no, there was no big diaper bag, tons of bottles. No, we didn't do that. If the kid got hungry, usually you came home, you did your errands and you came home. It wasn't going out and doing a lot of errands. You ran to the grocery store and you came home, basically. So there was no need to pack a big old diaper bag with games and little crackers and bottles. And we didn't do it. We didn't have car seats. We didn't have, no. There were no car seats. It's like you put the youngest kid as far in the back as you could and strapped him in.
Oh my word.
I remember my mom was driving the car in town. We were running some errands and I kind of got strapped in. I was a little kid. Like I said, we didn't have seatbelt. I mean, we had seatbelts, but we didn't have car seats back in the day. And somebody pulled out in front of us and my mom slammed on the brakes. And I remember I went down to the floorboard, where your feet go.
Yeah.
That's where I ended up because there was no car seat. I can't remember how old I was, but I do remember laying there like, what just happened? Yeah, no car seats.
Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah, because nowadays, stores will have special events where like the firefighters come and they show you how to put your car seat in. And Mike hates those because they just tell him everything he's doing wrong.
Right.
And they're like, oh, this is way too loose. And then like, it's always a girl firefighter, which nothing against girl firefighters. Like I have a cousin who's a girl firefighter. Like you go girl,
Right.
you save lives. But Mike's standing there and he's like, really? And she's like yanking on the car seat and like, look, now it's really strong. And I'm like over somewhere else, like petting a Dalmatian with the kids, just living my best life.
Well, we didn't have anything like that when I was growing up.
Yeah. So one more question. What about like when you'd get a boo-boo? Because I just remember with grandma, dad's mom, if I got a boo-boo, she'd be like, oh, you're fine. And I'm like, no, I'm bleeding. And just like, whatever.
Pretty much. It wasn't, there wasn't a big panic. Usually they took, the parent would take you into the bathroom, throw some peroxide on it. And it's like, oh, this isn't going to hurt.
You would do that to me all the time. And you kept saying it wouldn't hurt. And I'm like, it hurts. And you're like, oh, look at the bubbles. I'm like, Mom.
You try to distract the child with the bubbles, but it's like, oh, it's not going to hurt. It's just going to fizz. And that's the speech I always got. Or the red iodine. I don't think we do that anymore.
No, I think that's just a hospital thing.
Yeah, you would be, if it was a real bad boo-boo or whatever, they would do the peroxide thing and then slather this red iodine all over you.
That looks like blood.
Yes, it looked like blood. Exactly. And that was supposed to help you from getting infected. But I mean, you could come in just bleeding profusely and it's like, go walk it off, kids. You'll be fine.
Okay. So I did a little digging. I'll say that.
Digging. That sounds good.
Trying to remember what the 90s was. And one thing that didn't affect me in the 90s, but probably affected you very much, that I saw everywhere was maternity clothes in the 90s were like not cute.
Oh, you look like a parachute. Yeah, you look like you were wearing a parachute. They were awful. When I look back at some of the pictures when I was pregnant, I can't believe some of the things I wore. They were ugly. There was no form to them whatsoever. And I mean, you obviously knew when someone was pregnant because
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they were horrible, horrible. There was no style to them whatsoever. Nasty.
Yeah, because I remember when I started getting maternity clothes and I took you into that store, I think it was just called Motherhood. You were like, "Whoa, this stuff is like really cute." Like,
I know.
you know,
It's like you want to wear it when you're not pregnant. It's like I'm not pregnant, but I want to wear this stuff.
yeah. Maternity stuff is more form fitting. Like they're trying to show off the belly. Like here it is. Whereas when you were pregnant, it was like just a
Well,
giant balloon.
yes, it was a huge tent, a huge parachute kind of thing. I mean, usually, like I said, you knew the woman was pregnant just because of the clothes that she wore. It wasn't because she was kind of showing her belly off. But for me, I find it rather nice, to see a little round belly. I like it better than what we wore, that's for sure.
Yeah, it makes me happy. Like we were just driving home from the beach yesterday, and then this couple was walking, and like they're totally first time parents because she was like all dressed up cute. And I'm like,
Yeah.
if you were a mom, like no. But she was all cute and she had like her little maternity dress on and she had to be like maybe 7 or 8 months pregnant. And I'm like, oh, like I love that.
Yeah, it's adorable. They're so cute today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm too old to be pregnant today, but
I do remember, I don't know if they do this in America, but in Canada, where I grew up with my mom, they have special parking spaces for pregnant women.
Yeah.
And I know
Yes.
every now and then you'd park in one and just put your hands in your pocket and pull. Like, this is fine. I'm going to park here.
That's right. Exactly. Well, I am a mom. I may
Well,
not be pregnant,
yes.
but I'm a mom. So you just kind of stick your belly out. Yeah.
Mhm.
They
Yeah.
have those for expected mothers. And now at the mall, they have them for families.
That's
So,
nice.
yeah, if you have little kids, you're getting the stroller out and everything. You can park closer to the door, which is nice.
Yeah.
But in our day, no, it's whatever parking spot you got is what you got, pregnant or not pregnant.
Mhm.
You're on your own.
Okay, so another thing I looked at that I remember very vividly in the 90s was like food, like proper nutrition wasn't like a big deal. And I
No.
remember, well, first of all, I'll just admit it. I was a very picky child. Everyone, please feel bad for my mother. She had to put up with so much.
Oh,
But I
yeah.
remember having like bologna sandwiches all the time. And I don't even know if they make them anymore, but they're like those Kool-Aid drinks, but they came in that
Yes.
plastic bottle and you had to like break the top off. Like those were
Yes.
so bad for you, but they
Oh,
were
yeah.
so good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, and like nachos with like the melted cheese. It's fake cheese. It's not real cheese. Just all
No.
this stuff. Like it wasn't really, and if you were a person who like really cared about nutrition, you were like weird.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we didn't have gluten-free. Celiac disease is like, what is that? We had no clue. You're right. Nutrition was not high on the list of priorities. It's like you want a hot dog, you want some pizza, pigs in a blanket, like the Pop-Tarts, the donuts, like you said, the sugary drinks. We didn't think about nutrition at, in those days. It was like whatever was cheapest at the store, that's what you bought. Normally, if you were on a budget, you didn't think about all the additives and is it organic? I'm like, I didn't even know what organic was. No clue. And there's parents that today everything has to be organically grown or gluten free. We didn't have essential oils. I'm like, what's an essential oil? And now we're putting essential oil on our kids and we're using them to help them go to sleep, like the lavender and things like that. We didn't have any of that when you were growing up. It's just like whatever was on the menu, what was on special at the grocery store, healthy or not, it really, we didn't really think about it that much. I feel bad about it today.
Oh no, I even if
I read this, I read the nutritional label and I use my essential oils now. And I'm like, I didn't do this with my kids.
Hey, I still made it somehow, here I am.
You did, you made it through.
I just have a weird twitch in my eye now. And I don't, because you can't see me, but I don't. I was just joking. Another thing I thought about was technology was not a big deal for me growing up. Like even TV, like I know you joke about only having like 3 channels. And this was like a personal family decision, which I'm perfectly fine with, but we didn't really have cable. So we only had a few channels too. And I remember sitting on the couch with you watching Oprah on Tuesdays, like with the big hair Oprah. Yeah. And like we would watch Judge Judy.
I love Judge Judy.
And when we were home with grandma, we would watch Murder, She Wrote, which was so good. I loved it. But yeah, like the internet wasn't a really big deal until, I don't know, I was like 12 or 13 or something.
Wow.
I don't even remember.
Maybe even longer than that. No, we didn't have internet when you were younger. We didn't have tablets. We didn't have iPhones. We didn't have cell phones. We didn't walk around with our heads down all the time looking at our phones, or when the kid was at the grocery store and acting up, you couldn't just hand them your iPhone and say, hey, watch a movie or something like that. No, we didn't have anything like that. So you couldn't use like taking screen time away from your kid as a type of punishment of any type. And no, we didn't have it. We didn't have to, but one thing, not having it, we didn't have to worry about our kids being pursued, I guess you could say, on the internet. We didn't have to worry about that. I get that if there's anything good about not having that technology, that's one thing, because we didn't, constantly worry about our kids going to a website where, predators are there and things like that. So I think in that sense, it was easier bringing our kids up in that day without the technology.
Yeah. Another thing about technology before we cut to our commercial break is I remember family movie night is so different than family movie night now. Like we would drive to Blockbusters and we'd spend 30 minutes or more, I don't even know, and we'd go down every single aisle and we'd try and like everyone decide on the same movie we want to watch. And then you had to hope they had the movie, because you might get up there and they don't have it. And then we would, I can't remember if we ordered pizza or if we just bought like one of those frozen pizzas, but family movie night, it was like a big deal. It wasn't like now where I just turn on Disney Plus almost every day and I'm like, here, let's watch Frozen. Like you didn't do that.
No, you're right. It was Blockbusters. And if they didn't have your movie, then you had to come up with plan B. We didn't have Netflix. We didn't have Disney Plus. We didn't have any of that. And you had to, put your VH tape in there. And it was way different than it is today. It was more complicated, because you had to go to the store, you had to get the movie, and then you had to bring it home, and then you had to bring it back at a certain time, because if you didn't, then you had to pay a late fee and all of that. And then like the pizza, boy, sometimes I think we would just get the frozen pizza, and then some other times we would order in pizza. But completely different.
Yeah. I remember at the Blockbuster store standing there like waiting for Dad to check the movie out. They had like a wall of shame, and it was a VHS that someone had left in their car on a hot day. It was like all morphed and melted, and I was like, wow, that is so weird.
Like, do not do this, and please be kind and rewind. Do you remember little note that they would put up, so you make sure that you would have to rewind? You had to rewind it because you're all ready to sit down and watch your movie, and then you have to wait to rewind it. Yeah, that was the worst.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we'll talk about our parenting styles and how they've changed through the generations.
Like what you're hearing so far? Be sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you, and we really love sharing with you guys. Now back to the show.
So tell me tell me the differences of how grandma raised you versus how you raised me. And then we can talk about the similarities too.
Back in the day with grandma, it was stricter, a lot stricter than it is today. It wasn't that the kids ran the home, the parents ran the home. You didn't talk back to your parents. You didn't think about talking back to your mom or dad, to sass. That was one of the worst things that you could do. We had grounding. You would get grounded if you didn't do what you were supposed to do. A lot of times, if there were problems at the school, it wasn't the teacher's fault. Like today, we blame the teacher. Well, you're not stimulating my child the way they need to be stimulated. No, back in the day, it was like your child is misbehaving, they're being rude, they're being disruptive. You need to try to control the child. There wasn't things like ADHD and learning difficulties and things like that. So it was basically your child's the problem and not the teacher. So it was more strict in a lot of ways. I think kids were in general more respectful to the authorities that were placed over them, such as your police officers, your teachers. Kids were more respectful. We were held accountable. You know what, the thing about the child's self-esteem wasn't even an issue when I was growing up. We weren't worried about, oh, well, if we hold Johnny back a year or whatever, it might hurt his self-esteem. That wasn't even considered when I was growing up. So I think it was stricter than what it is, I think, today.
Mm-hmm. You guys, I don't want to say you guys were like strict because that just sounds bad. Like my brother and I, like we knew what was expected of us, and we knew that if we misbehaved, we were going to get in trouble. Like we knew you guys were always going to follow through, but we weren't like fearful,
Right.
Like we weren't terrified of mom and dad at all.
Right. I mean, there were consequences to bad actions or bad attitudes, and you and your brother knew that there were going to be consequences if you didn't do what you were asked or told to do. And we didn't try to reason with a 2-year-old. You can't reason with a 2-year-old when they're in the store throwing a tantrum. I mean, I think today, a lot of times it's like, well, we'll just give the child what they want and you can stop the tantrum, because we're so busy in our lives. We don't have the time to stop and parent kids the way that they should be parented. And so it's just like, give the kid whatever they want. And then just say, well, how do you feel about it? I mean, you can't ask a 2-year-old, well, how are you feeling about it? And different things like that. And something else that is different is that, I don't know if they do this in the States, but I think you're going to remember this, that you were taught in school that you have different places in your brain that you can go to, and they're still teaching it today. Like the green part of your brain, or go to the pink part of the brain, or the blue part. I think the green part was the angry.
I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like that, where there was like an angry, I think green was angry because it had like an alligator on it or something.
Yeah, like the green was angry, and then the pink part was your happy place. And so you're trying to tell your kid, well, I know you're in the green part of your brain right now. Let's see if we can get you to the pink part. And so that's completely different. I mean, when I was growing up, and you too, it was like, just knock it off. Okay. It wasn't like, okay, now let's try to get you over to your pink part of your brain. We didn't talk that way. It was like, you better knock it off now, or you're not getting this or this, or you're getting this when you get home. Kind of
yeah. I do a lot of independent, like I try and teach my girls how to be independent, and a lot of hands-on stuff instead of just talking to them. So the reason for that is partly because of what I went to school for. Like you and I have the same degree, which is so cool. Like we had some of the same teachers. Like I walk into class and they go, oh, you're Kim's girl. And I'm like, whoa, it's so weird. Yeah, so because of that, I'm more in tune with like different studies that have been done and that have come out more. And like we really are in the information age where you can get just within seconds all of this information about child development and studies and things that have been done like over like years and years and years worth of studies. And just because of my career of working with kids and stuff, I'm definitely like very much in tune with child psychology and all of that. And so another reason why I do a lot of teaching my girls how to be independent, like I teach them how to put away their laundry, and put their dishes away, have it really low down so they can do it themselves. Partly is because I want to enable them and I want to teach them and I want them to be independent, but also part of it is that I'm lazy. And like, I'm tired, okay? So if I can get them to do part of the chores, then I'm winning. Hashtag winning.
Absolutely. You know what? When I look back, when I see you as a mother and I look back and I see what I did as a mother, there's things that I would change definitely as a mother. Like, as you said, trying to have the girls be more independent. I would have done that definitely with you and Nathan. Had I been able to redo my motherhood, I would have done that. You go back and you look at things, how things are now and what you did back then, and you kind of wish you could make a blend of the two things, because there's things I definitely would change. I mean, we did what we knew to do and what we were taught was right at the time. But then as, you know, we evolve and we learn as a parent, and I see you parenting your girls, I'm thinking, you know what, I should have been more hands off and taught you two to be more independent, putting your laundry away, putting the dishes away and things like that. It was just easier. Let me do it. I need to get it done. I'm busy, kind of a thing. And so there's things that both of you could have learned sooner had I been more hands off in that sense. So yes, I mean, as I look back, I'm thinking, do I have regrets? Yeah, there's things that I regret and things that I would have changed for sure. Watching you as a mother.
I'm just gonna take this opportunity to blame all of the 90s moms for not teaching us how to fold fitted sheets, because none of us know how to do it.
I don't either. I'm just like this is good enough to me.
Like, honestly, it ends up in a ball or it just goes right back on the bed. Like
exactly. That's how I do it. I'm like, it's gonna go back on the bed. What's the point?
Who cares? Who cares? And again, everyone feel bad for mom. I was a very dramatic child.
Oh, you were the drama queen.
So I feel everything very deeply. It is either the best day of my life or it's the end of the world. And then there's not a lot of middle ground.
In between.
So my girls are very much like me in that sense.
Oh, yes.
So because I know how my brain works and I know how their brain works, because it works like mine. So I try to put myself in their shoes when they're having like a really bad meltdown. Again, trying to logically reason with a 2-year-old is very difficult, if not impossible. So at that point, you're just kind of like in a survival mode as a mom.
Right.
Especially if it's in the middle of Walmart and you have a cart full of groceries.
Oh yeah.
So, but anyway, because of that, I remember the way I felt and I remember how my brain would process things. And again, with all of my education and stuff I've had. So I try and get down on their level and put myself in their shoes. And they're both at the age now where I can talk them through it. Sometimes they just won't. And I'm like, okay, well, now I just don't know what to do with you. But I do get like down on their level and I talk to them a lot more. And like I talk about their feelings, but not in like a super wishy-washy way. I want to teach them control of your feelings. Like it's okay to be mad. Mommy gets mad. It's okay to want something at the store. I want stuff at the store all the time, but here's how you handle that. There's definitely a balance. Like some people kind of go way over there and go, oh, you're sad. Well, okay, what now you have to tell them what to do with that. Another thing, I remember being a super picky eater, which we already kind of touched on. And so I definitely have a couple of those sitting at my dinner table. So I remember having to sit at the table for like an hour or 2 hours, just staring at my cold dinner and
Yeah.
not wanting to eat it. So
Yes.
anyway, what I do with my kids, and I'm not saying that this is like the perfect way to do it because I'm still figuring it out, is that I try to have them at least try one bite of whatever the thing is they don't want. And then I watch and I try and figure out, okay, is this just like a texture thing? Because I have a texture issue with onions. I don't mind the flavor, but crunching into an onion, like, ugh, I don't like it. I don't like it when it's like snuck into my little spaghetti sauce and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, what is that? So I try and figure out if it's a texture thing, then I don't normally offer it again, or I try and change the texture. But if it's like something I know they like or something I know they have eaten in the past, then I will definitely have them try it. And then I'll just like offer it, but like in different ways. So like carrots, I'll offer them roasted. I'll offer them, boiled or raw or with this sauce or that sauce. And so that's a little different than how you did it. And I don't know if you, I would hide my carrots in my boots and I'd take them into the bathroom. Did you hear about that?
No, this
is
so
on another podcast, I was talking about how I didn't want to eat my baby carrots. And so I took my baby carrots and I shoved them in my boot, like my winter boots. Yeah. And then I would go in the bathroom and they had to either flush them, which is really bad. Don't do that. Or I would wrap them in toilet paper and throw them away.
Oh my goodness.
I know. And they were just carrots. Like, come on, Brittany, just eat them.
Well, you know what? I think part of it when you were growing up and how I was brought up and how our parents, it's like this domino effect because my parents were brought up in the Depression age. And so you ate everything on your plate, whatever it is, you ate it because you were fortunate enough to have food to eat. And so that mentality was passed down to me. And so when I sat at the table, whatever was placed in front of you, ate. You ate it and you didn't complain. And you cleaned your plate as well. I mean, my grandma would take a jar of jelly and stick a piece of bread in and wipe every last little speck of jelly out. That's what it was like. And so then when I was raising you and Nathan, it was like, well, you must eat everything on your plate. You don't question it. I don't care about but I didn't think about texture or anything like that.
And to be fair, I was very dramatic. And so sometimes it'd be like, okay, does she really not like this? Or is she just like having a Brittany day and she's being a drama queen today?
It was like dinner and a show. I mean, but yeah, I mean, that's why we were like, oh, you have to eat this. I mean, we don't have a lot of money and this is what we can afford, and like it or not, this is supper and you have to eat it. And yeah, and then I'm thinking back, well, was that really a battle? I could have just lost that battle, but sometimes you get stubborn and you're like, okay, well, I can dig my heels in deeper than you. And you're going to sit here for 2 hours, or I'm going to wrap it up and it's going to, you're going to eat it tomorrow if you don't eat it today, kind of a thing. But yeah, that's one thing I probably would have done differently as well. Just don't have the drama.
Well, I vividly remember you sitting at the table trying to make your grocery shopping list, and you would have like those flyers that you get in the mail.
Oh, yes.
And you'd sit there and just look at me and be like, what will you eat? And I'm like,
perfect for me.
I know, so bad. Oh, and I have developed quite a palate now.
Yes, you have. Now you eat Brussels sprouts. I would have never expected you to eat Brussels sprouts.
Yeah.
But you come a long way, baby.
We're going to take a quick commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to share a story from our childhoods. Guys, I am so excited to tell you that the Imperfect Moms Club has merch. That's right, we are feeling so legit over here. If you check out the link in our Instagram bio, or you follow us on the blog, you can find t-shirts, sweatshirts, coffee mugs, stickers, water bottles, even bandanas for your dog. It's so adorable.
And if you purchase any of our merch, you're actually helping support the podcast. We would love to see you wearing our shirts, so please tag us on social media.
Welcome back to the show. It's story time. So I remember when I was I think it was first grade, and we went to a school in town, and we would go home for lunch. You guys would always come and pick us up and come home, have lunch, and then we'd go back to school for the afternoon. And for whatever reason, I think Dad was supposed to pick us up that day, and he got Nathan first, or he took longer to pick up Nathan or something. And I remember standing out there on the playground just waiting for someone to pick me up, and everyone went home, and I'm just standing there, and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna walk home. And it wasn't that far away, but I also had never walked home before. And this was when things had gotten a little bit scarier for parents. So I remember riding my bike up and down our street. We had a very limited amount of road that we were allowed to be on.
Oh, yes. From one stop sign to the other.
Yeah. I mean, lucky for us, we had a nice hill on that little stretch. So that was fun. But you never let me just walk to school or walk down to the little gas station or nothing ever like that. And I was like, well, I'm just going to walk home. So I started walking home. And I got a little bit lost, and lucky for me, on my way home, I saw one of my friends playing out in her front yard after she had lunch, and I knew how to get home from the library. And I was like, hey, Susie, or whatever her name was. I was like, because I was lost, and I'm like, oh man, and I didn't have a cell phone, nothing. And I'm like, can you show me how to get to the library? And she's like, yeah. And so she turned a couple corners, and then the library was there. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I walk home, and I was so proud of myself for getting home. And I remember being tired. My legs were so tired. And I walk in the door, and you were on the phone crying. And I don't remember if you were on the phone with Grandma or if you were going to call the police, because
getting ready to call the police.
Yeah. And I'm just walking in hey,
what's up?
Yeah. And I remember eating my bologna sandwich, because that was the only thing I would eat.
That was it. Yeah.
And then my lunch break being super short, because I had spent most of it walking, and then okay, it's time to go. And I'm like, what? School starts in 10 minutes. Let's go. But do you remember that?
Yes. You know, those are frightening moments for a mother, where you panic, and where you're just going to be on the phone, going to call the police. And then your kid just shows up, and you're like, oh, thank you, God. They haven't been kidnapped.
Do you remember when I was going to run away from home?
Oh, yes.
Okay, so I was mad at you because you were vacuuming. How dare you vacuum? And you couldn't hear me. I was like, Mom, but the vacuum was on. And I was like, fine. So I marched to my room, and you walked in while I was packing my bag. Yeah. And I was smart. I had underwear and stuff in there. I didn't just pack toys,
Oh,
and you were like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, I'm running away. And so you're like, okay, well, you'll need a snack. And so you made me a peanut butter and jelly. And then I'm marching down the hall, and Nathan and Dad are there. And they're like, what is she doing? And you're like, oh, she's running away. Marching down the stairs, and well, where are you going? I'm going to Grandma's. Well, we were in Canada, and Grandma was in Illinois. So
it's a long way.
Yeah. And then so Dad's like, okay. So Dad opened the door, and it was pouring rain. It was just like a movie. And I started crying, and I'm like, don't send me away. And it was so traumatic.
Oh, there we go with the drama again.
Yeah. Yep. But I love the way you handled that.
Well, at the moment when it happens, you're like, because I think every kid tries to run away from home. I know I did it with my mom, and she kind of responded in the same way. I just walked around the block, and I came home. But you wonder, how am I going to handle it if my kid ever says they're going to run away from home? And so you just try to stay cool and calm, and hopefully that the child will realize it's better at home than out there.
Oh, especially if they're 6. So
yes. hopefully they'll realize the error of their way and not want to go away.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely need wisdom on that one for sure.
All right. So tell me something from your childhood.
Oh, well, a little embarrassing, I guess. When I was, I think it's 6 or 7 years old, I would always watch my dad and my brother. And in the summertime, they would go shirtless if it was really, really hot. And so Grandpa would be walking around the house doing chores, whatever, with his shirt off. And then, of course, my brother was riding his bike and playing with his friends with his shirt off. And I was quite the tomboy at the time. And so I thought, well, I don't have to wear a shirt either. So I took my shirt off and I had my shorts on and I got on my bike and just started running around the neighborhood.
And all the other housewives are looking out their kitchen windows going,
oh my goodness. What it was, my mother was horrified, and I'm sure she got phone calls from the neighbor, like you said. Did you know your daughter is out there without a shirt on riding around the neighborhood and the boys are looking at her? I mean, I was 5 or 6 years old. Okay. So
yeah,
seriously, no big deal. But yeah, my mom was mortified, and it was quite the conspiracy in the neighborhood for a while. that
you also grew up in a really small town.
Oh yes, and everybody knew everybody, so I'm sure it made the rounds around town. Everybody knew what I did, but I was a little girl at the time. I didn't know any better. And so my mom brought me inside. I didn't get in trouble for it. She brought me inside and she's like, well, what are you doing? And I'm like, well, my brother and dad, they're going around without shirts. And so why can't I? And I mean, I didn't, you're so innocent and naive at that age. And so she just explained to me that little girls need to wear shirts when they go outside. So from then on, I always had a t-shirt on for sure. But yeah, that was, I'm sure, an embarrassing moment for my parents. But do you remember when you were a little girl, you were running through the house with scissors and they went up your nose?
Oh, I tell that story all the time. So because I work with kids and it's in a school setting, we often have scissors. And I always tell them pointy side down. And then some kid always doesn't listen, and I'm like, gather around, children. And I really amp it up, and I'm like, once upon a time. And I tell them about when I was little. I can't remember how old I was, but I was little. I was running down the hall and I had grandma's scissors, and they were her embroidery scissors, which ended up being very lucky for me because they were short. Now they were sharp, but they were short.
Right.
And I fell and they went up my nose. Again, very lucky they didn't go in my eyeball.
Yeah.
And I obviously I bled a little bit, but it wasn't like I had to go to the hospital. But don't tell my kindergarten class that, because I'm like, and I was bleeding. and they're all like horrified. And then it's funny because then on the playground, they'll go to the first graders who are like, come over here, Miss Brittany, tell Jonathan about what happened to you. And they're like, it's this big deal. So I will use that story till my dying day. Like,
oh yes,
tactic.
A teaching moment right there.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode of the Imperfect Moms Club. If you like what you heard, please visit our website at www.imperfectmomspodcast.com. There you'll find more information about us, a list of all our episodes, a blog, and even a merchandise shop. We love this podcast so much and are thrilled to be able to share it with all of you.